I waited 3 hours or so in line to get on the phone that night. And when I finally got a hold of my brother, I said, come on, man. I said, what happened? Tell me about it. And he, first thing out of his mouth was, he says, were you fucking that prosecutor or something? Yeah, because she talked pretty good about you, man.
What's cooking, everybody? I am joined in the bunker today by my friend, Mr. Tim McBride, who is back with some more phenomenal stories. And once again, if you have not already purchased his book, Saltwater Cowboy, from Amazon or wherever you get your books, make sure you do that. It is fantastic. There's a lot of stories in there that he doesn't even have time to get to in podcasts, but you will love every second. Total page turner. And look, this guy was one of the biggest smugglers of pot in U.S. history. He's lived a hell of a life. This was years ago, but it's pretty wild how it all went down. We've heard about some of it on the previous podcast with him. We're going to hear all about the downfall today, the things that happened in prison, just a bunch of more good stories from a great guy here. So thoroughly enjoyed it, and I know you guys will too. If you're on Apple or Spotify right now, please make sure you give a 5-star review if you haven't already. That's a huge, huge help. And follow the show if you haven't done that. And if you are on YouTube, make sure you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and would love to hear from you down in the comment section as well. And to all of you, whether you're on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube, please continue to share around the links to this show. It's a huge, huge help. The word of mouth is the best thing we can get, be it in text messages to friends or on social media, wherever you're most comfortable doing it. It's all a huge help, and I appreciate every single one of you who has done it already. Let's keep it rolling and grow this baby. That said, you know what it is. I'm Julian Dorey, and this is TRENDIFIER. Let's go! This is one of the great questions in our culture. Where is the nuance? You're giving opinions and calling them facts. You feel me? Everyone understands this, but few seem to do it. If you don't like the status quo, start asking questions. Goddamn, man. I mean, the number of stories you have from this is beyond comprehension. Obviously, I encourage people to actually get your book because there's a million in there, and I'm still like halfway through it. I got more to go. But like, when did this actually start coming down? You said you were doing it for about 10 years before you got arrested. Like, did you see it coming when it happened? And if not, like, how did the whole case happen?
Right. Yeah. No, actually, none of us saw it coming. And one of the biggest shockers of it all, other than, having the feds knocking on my door one day, was the fact that they had changed the federal sentencing guidelines after the first 2 generations had been sentenced, and they realized that the sentences that they were giving weren't garnering the desired effect, coupled with the fact that they didn't realize the magnitude by which all this was happening, and that the people they took out left the infrastructure in place, which was us kids. And right. I say kids, we're 20 years old, but I'm 64, dude, they're kids. We continued operating on the assumption that we're just going to get a smack and, go away for 8, 10, 12 months and come back home and that. But when we finally, when it finally all came down, and it was just a simple matter of having one of the crew, a local guy who'd been there and born and raised in the area, working and potholing, and his part in all of this was running one of those chase boats that I had alluded to, right, running alongside the bigger boats offshore. He had a nice boat that was perfectly designed for that sort of thing, so he was hired a lot of times to do that. Well, when the guys aren't potholing or doing their thing, even myself, I don't care what they do. I don't give a fuck, but just, be there when you're needed, and show up, right, do the work, and then go off and do whatever. Well, that being said, this particular gentleman had been in Colombia farting around with cocaine and wound up getting himself fucked up and thrown in prison in Colombia. And the federal government knew that he was part of it was from Everglades and part of that, little clique that was going on there. And they went down there and offered him a deal saying, we'll get you out of here. Here's what we need you to do for us.
A lot worse down there.
He jumped on the thing, and that's how they wound up, following me around and, following some other people around. This is some of the guys that were working, under me and next to me and partnering with me and on occasion.
Hey guys, at the end of this episode, when the conversation with Tim and me finishes, there's an extra 3-4 minutes. It's an announcement I have announcement, conversation with fans, whatever you want to call it, about the show. I didn't want to include it in the intro because it was too long. So for all the fans out there, I'd really appreciate it if you stuck around and heard that. Thanks. So they were surveilling you for a while.
Yeah, for a little while. I don't know exactly how long, but long enough to where the whole thing that left us in place was a simple fact that, because they had changed the guidelines, because it wasn't getting their desired effect, they changed them to mandatory minimums, and they didn't realize until after they started this thing broke open with the help of this one gentleman. He was running chase boat for one of my jobs that I was doing. 47,000 pounds, I think 57,000 pounds, and I split the load two ways. I was sent half to north of Naples to a place called Pine Island, and the other half to the Everglades City guys, the Everglades City crew. So I split the load up like that. I hadn't necessarily worked any great deal of time with this other crew from Pine Island, so I chose to go up there and and sit with those guys and do that end of it, and let the guys that I grew up with, they knew what they were doing. I didn't have to babysit that shit. So, we're up there, and the job is on. And prior to going out, we were on a back road out in bumfuck nowhere land on Pine Island, and an old dirt.
Where's Pine Island again?
Pine Island is
I can pull it up.
just north of Sanibel and Captiva Island, just north of Cape Coral.
I'll put that in the corner so people can see. But
Okay,
keep going.
and old grown up kind of a roadway, if you want to call it that, back into the woods led to an old dock that was broken and fallen apart and just neglected and just hadn't been used. And one of the Pine Island guys thought that would be a great place to unload or load. So we backed a U-Haul truck down in through the woods up next to the dock. So the job is on, and the little boats are doing their thing. They're bringing their stuff ashore, and they're throwing it to the guys on the dock, and they're throwing it bang, bang, bang into the truck, right? And so 5 or 6 or so boats or whatever showed up, and we unloaded them, and then they just quit coming. It was nothing after that point. I'm thinking, what the fuck's going on, man? And nobody's on the radio, nobody's talking. And then it wasn't too long after that, I had a spotter out by the road, and sitting in the bushes, and he says, he gets on the radio and goes, Tim, he says, a car just pulled up in here and backed out and went back the other direction. And I'm thinking, we're out in the middle of fucking nowhere. That guy's got no business being out here. So
They got you.
I turned around and started walking through the woods back up to the entrance to the, off the main road. And I had him tell me, exactly what took place. And while he's telling me this, I turned around. Everybody that was back at the dock and the truck was standing behind me too. They were going to stand back there, right? And
So where's the truck's just chilling?
the truck's back there. We still got shit in it, whatever.
They're taking pictures and everything.
Fuck that thing, man. But no, so we're standing there, and all of a sudden I hear this caravan of cars roaring down the fucking road, man. And just as soon as I could see there, was some trees here, and to my right was a field of palmetto bushes, and palmetto bushes don't get more than maybe 4 feet high, like this. And it was whole maybe 3-4 acres of this shit this way. And to the left of me was a pine tree forest that you could run off through the forest and go, right? Well, as soon as I saw the first set of headlights on the road up here, I heard them slowing down like that. Everybody scattered like fucking, somebody turned the light on a bunch of cockroaches, right? And everybody else runs this way into the pinewood forest. I start dancing through the palmettos going this direction. I didn't get maybe 25 feet, and here that car was visible, and I squatted down. I didn't get on my butt and nothing like that. I'm squatted down on my feet and my knees, and I'm bent down like this with my head down so they can't see me. And on occasion, there would be they call them illegal aliens now, but this Colombian dude came in with the load, and he was just going to get a ride into town, and he's in the States.
Right.
Well, he runs the same way as I did, only he keeps running. And I crunch down there, and this tan Bronco pulls in. Bunch of them, I hear him stop, and I still hear him crunching through the fire. I said, dude, I'm saying to myself, you got to stop, man. Or if this fucker hears you and he starts running, he's going to run up and trip over me going after you because I'm right there. So finally he stops and that, but I mean, here they come. I mean, they were all over the place. And I can hear them, and it's still dark out, and it's like, there's some over there. They're running over there. Let's go over there. And,
I always forget that all this, like any story like this, is always happening in the middle of the night. Sometimes when I'm first picturing it, I'm just picturing like daytime. I'm like, no, that's not it.
Yeah, no, it
makes it even harder.
This is all nighttime shit, man. And so I hear them. They're chasing after. There's guys over there, but they ultimately wound up not catching anyone. Red-handed. Yeah. So here I am. I got nowhere to go because they're all around me. And
was the truck was a U-Haul, you said, right?
Yeah.
So it was like rented or something?
Rented U-Haul truck.
Yeah, so you just burned the
truck. A big box truck. Fucking, piss on it, man. Leave it, It was probably rented. I didn't have any part in renting it. The crew, Pine Island crew did, and they probably put a bogus name under it or some shit anyways. But I can hear all this goings on, and I can't get up and move. I can't, and I'm not sitting down yet. I'm still hunched on my haunches, and my legs are going numb, and they're fucking, I can't feel them. And every time somebody slammed a door or made some kind of noise, I'd shuffle and move my feet because I'm crunching on these dry leaves and shit. And finally, so I could sit down and get the blood in my legs. So if I did have a chance to go, I'm fucking gone, man. But I'm sitting there and I'm listening to this whole thing take place, and before I know it, the sun's starting to come up. It's starting to get light out.
Uh-oh.
And I'm thinking, oh, fuck, here we go, man. I mean, because if the sun comes up, dude, there I am right there, Because I can see through the bushes. I could see their feet.
Yeah.
Like this, getting in and out of that fucking Bronco. Well, as it's starting to get light out, the guy in the Bronco gets in, he backs out and goes down the road. And he comes back, and the time he gets in and stops, and I could hear another car pull up outside on the main road, and the guy in the Bronco gets out, and the guy that was in the car, evidently out in the street, says, "What are you doing, man? Where are you going?" He says, the guy in the Bronco says, "I'm going to walk down in there and see what we got back there." And the guy out on the street goes, "Hang on, I'll go with you." And I'm thinking, is this my opportunity to fucking, split once these guys, get out of view of me? But the car in the street was still running. And I didn't know, maybe there's somebody still in the car. Because if I pop my head up and look and he sees me, I got two choices.
Is the guy in the Bronco a cop? Is that the assumption?
He wound up being the head of the entire Operation Peacemaker is what they called it. He was Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE.
Wait, they called this Operation Peacemaker?
Called it Operation Peacemaker.
Who was involved with this? Like every agency?
Everybody who was anybody, man, was involved in this. It was FBI, CIA, DEA. CIA. I mean, because we were working internationally. And this is coming on the heels of the Iran-Contra shit.
Oh, yeah.
So
CIA is trying to cover their tracks.
So they're trying to figure out what the fuck. Maybe they've got some loose ends going on here for whatever reasons. But everybody who was anybody in law enforcement was involved in this thing. There was over 280 plus federal agents from all over the country got involved in this thing. And it just turns out that this gentleman in the Bronco, turns out his name is David Waller. He was the resident agent for Florida Department of Law Enforcement, which is a quasi branch of the federal government, only state-bound.
That's not the U.S. Customs guy you were telling me about, right?
No, that's the whole different
That's a different
thing,
guy.
right?
Okay, yeah.
This is David, who wound up being friends with me after so many years, as they all did, But that's another story. But
you weren't the most dangerous man that they were going after. Put it that way.
No, exactly. And then they knew this too, you know. So, like I said, I hear the car running, and I think, now the sun's like full blown up. I got no choice. I got to look. So I look up, and there was nobody in the car. Whew, I took off running, man. I went across through the ditch, across the street, through the other ditch, and I took off running to the woods, man.
Oh, I thought you were going to say I took the car. I was like, damn, this escalated quickly.
Yeah, no. And I ran my ass off till I couldn't breathe. I couldn't run anymore, and I dove under some bushes and covered myself up with leaves, and I just laid there all day because this is in the just early morning hours. I'm, and
in the woods in the woods, Florida.
In Florida,
mosquitoes
and I'm
everywhere,
laying out
rattlesnakes.
Oh fuck,
all
dude.
of it.
that was the least of my concerns, And I'm laying out there, and as the sun's coming up, and I can hear the helicopters, but I don't see them, and I hear them pulling my box truck out of the trees, bang, bang, bang through the branches and shit. I know they got that fucker, and so I had no choice but stay there all day. I got to wait for this shit to stop somehow or whatever. So, after a while, I realized, okay, there's nobody was chasing me. So I got away clean. They didn't see me, so I'm cool. If I can just hang out and wait
Sure.
them out and see what the fuck goes on. So I'm laying there, and it's been all night, and into the next day, and I've got to take I got to take a mean shit, big time. So fuck this, and I got out, and I got nothing to wipe my ass with. But
you got a few leaves.
I got a pocket full of $100 bills.
Oh my god!
So I take a nice relaxing, dump right there in the bushes, and I wipe my ass with about $600 worth of. I just left it there.
That's the most expensive ass wipe of all time.
That's the most expensive shit anybody really ever took. But so I get back into the bush and I lay down, I cover myself back up, with leaves and shit, and up in my face like that, and I kind of dozed off a little bit.
Could you see how many were still around?
I must have ran a mile, 2 miles. I don't know how far I ran
so
back.
Really far.
I could just hear them. I could hear the box truck. I couldn't hear any of the cars and any of the people. I could hear the helicopters and that kind of shit. But I was pretty distanced.
So how long did it take before you were like, I'm clear to walk out of here?
That next night, I waited till nightfall again.
And you couldn't hear anything?
No, they had by that time. I eased my way back that way, and there was nobody left. There. But up until that, that time as such time as I had walked out of there.
What year is this, by the way?
This is 1988.
Okay.
And I'm laying there all covered up in this shit, and I'm dozing off, and all of a sudden I hear some twigs and branches and leaves crunching. And I open my eye like this, and I close my eyes like this, and I look like this, and there was a bobcat.
Oh, nice.
Probably about a good-sized cat, probably about 60 pounds, and he's creeping up on me like this. And I open one, I just barely open them, and I seen this fucker. He's about 2 arms lengths away from me. Hunch down, because he's not really sure what he's looking at. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, fuck, I just escaped all that shit, and I'm going to get my asshole tore off by this fucking thing, right? And
would have been nice to have a gun.
Yeah. Yeah, so here I am, and I'm thinking, I gotta, this just can't happen, And it just occurred to me, and I didn't give it a second thought. I just busted out of the leaves, like this, and that thing jumped up in the air, did like 3 flips in the air, and took off. Shot like
you scared away a bobcat.
Scared him right out of his fucking wits, dude. He took off running through the bushes like he was shot out of a cannon. Right? And I got past that, and so here comes nightfall, and I make my way out of the bushes, and I'm walking off the side of the road in the trees, trying to make my way back down Pine Island Road and get to some semblance of civilization and get my ass the fuck out of there. Now here I am the next night after this whole, scenario takes place, and I came across the Pine Island Fish House, and it's like 2 or 3 in the morning, and the lights are still on, but there's nobody in the parking lot. The lights are on inside the fish house, and I'm standing just out of and there's lights on in the parking lot, and I'm standing just out of in the shade of the trees, and I'm staring at this one. This is before cell phones. I'm staring at this parking lot with this one telephone booth sitting right there in the parking lot under all these lights, and there's nobody around. And I can't just walk up to that fucking thing, because who knows who's around.
Yeah.
So as I'm contemplating what my next move is, a couple of boats, a longliner and a shrimp trawler come pulling in, and that's what they were waiting for in the fish house, so evidently for these boats to come in so they can unload their catch. Well, they unload the catch, and the crew from both boats wind up single file in the line to use the phone to call somebody to come and pick them up. And I said, well, this is fuck. Jackpot. This is my way out. So
I'm out.
I picked all this fucking shit off me. I slinked down there and just got in line with everybody else. And when it got
you look like you had just been in the woods in Vietnam.
Yeah, but
and they didn't ask any questions.
There were no worse for wear either. They just got off a fucking shrimp boat for the last 3 weeks or some shit,
I guess that makes sense, yeah.
So I take my turn in the phone booth, and I open the phone book up to taxis, and I call the first fucking one I looked at, And the guy picks the phone up. He's like, I must have woke him up from a dead sleep or some shit. I said, I need to hire you to come to, Pine Island Fish House and, pick me up and take me into, Punta Gorda or someplace, and take me to a motel. And he said, did you happen to realize I'm hell and gone from where the fuck you're at, man? And I said, because he was like, I don't know, probably 40 miles away or some shit like that. And I said, I don't really give a shit. And
I got a lot of money.
I said, if you're willing, just pull up. I'll throw $600 fucking dollars and hundreds in your fucking lap, and plus I'll pay for your cab fare if you show the fuck up, dude. I mean, I just come on now. And he said, you promise? Nobody on the phone. I'm a nobody on the phone. He's asking me to give me his word. And he's, yeah, dude, yeah. No worries.
You didn't have to power wash the shit bills, did you?
No.
Okay, just making sure.
No.
That would have been cool.
So as I'm on the phone talking to this fucking guy, here comes the sheriff's car, pulls in the parking lot, drives right in front of me, goes over here, circles around the parking lot, around behind me, goes out the entrance and turns and goes back down the road like that.
Were you shitting yourself?
I'm sweating fucking bullets, man.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, come on, man. You got to do this for me. And he said, okay, I'll be there in like 40 minutes or whatever. I hung the phone up. I hung out with these guys, for a little while. And here he come after a bit. And first thing I did when I got in the back, and I threw $600 bills in his lap. And I said, let's go, man. I slunk down in that seat, and he took me to a motel room where I spent the rest of the night. And the next day I called a buddy. I said, come and get me, man. And I got out of there with, and
so you didn't get caught?
None of us got caught. Nobody got caught.
Did you shut down operations? Or?
No, I worked for a little while after. I still had some shit that needed to be done.
Still rolling. Still fun. All right, back to business.
I had to finish up. I already had, commitments, but beyond those commitments that I had made, no, that was the end of it. So I was into the, the next year by that time.
Okay, so you obviously took care of those commitments, and then you took a chill pill. So did you start back up and then you got arrested, or what?
No.
How'd it go down?
The investigation continued, not from just from that one job, but from the, everything prior to that. Yeah. And it was probably about maybe 2-3 months when I got a knock on the front door and opened up, and there's this little guy, little chubby, bald-headed dude, sweating through his white shirt and black tie, and hands me a subpoena to the grand jury. And I went cold, man, like that. I didn't say anything to him. I just slammed the fucking door, and I turned around and called my attorney.
All right, wait a second. So they didn't arrest you?
They summoned me to the grand jury.
Wait, I've never actually heard of this. Like, the target of an investigation doesn't get arrested, and they summon you to testify?
Yep.
So you had an attorney on payroll at this point?
Mm-hmm.
Was that the only attorney, or you had
a few? No, just him.
Okay.
But
so what'd you do on that?
What happened was, when I was finally arrested, when they came to my house, wasn't too long after that.
So you hadn't even been to the grand jury yet?
No. Well, we showed up, but he had told them that I was going to take the fifth. And,
okay.
Any questioning was going to result in my taking the Fifth Amendment right, which I have every right to do.
Where was the grand jury?
At the federal building in Fort Myers.
Okay, so you show up at this building.
I show up with my attorney, and we're waiting for my shit to go in the grand jury, and they dismissed me. I didn't even go in because two things at that time we suspected. That, first of all, that they had probably got enough information when they didn't really need my testimony. Plus, I was giving the fifth, and it was a waste of everybody's time anyways for me to even attempt it. So we took off and went back, and the night they came to my house, I had a friend of mine that was staying in one of my spare rooms because the house that he was renting was being sold. And I get this knock on my door at like, I don't know, must have been like 2 in the morning or some shit. I don't remember exactly. But my dogs started barking. I had a couple of Maltese. My girlfriend and I at that time, she'd left. We were breeding them, like that. And I went to the front in the window and I looked out the blinds like that. And I saw this one sheriff's deputy standing on the front porch, knocking on the door.
Just one?
Just one. And I told my buddy Don, I said, just go tell the fucking guy I'm not home, And I thought maybe the neighbors called because the dogs were barking or some stupid shit, He opened the door, and he no sooner got that door open, that guy grabbed him, threw him out on the front lawn. And these guys come out of nowhere like ninjas with black everything and black on their faces, and they duck all kinds of guns in his faces. And And I'm in the bedroom. I'm back in the bedroom, and I can hear this. And I hear him say, "Is Tim McBride in that house?" And he goes, "Yeah, he's in there." And I'm thinking, "Thanks, Don, man. You're just..." So I'm laying on the bed, and all of a sudden I look out my bedroom window, and I see those, the flashlights going up and down the walls in the hallway.
You start waving?
I stuck my head out like this, and one of them shined the light right in my face. I said, "Get that fucking light out of my eyes." And the guy goes, "Get on the ground, hit the knees, lay down like that." I went doom, boom, like this. And next thing I could feel a cold steel pushing against me like this. They tackled me,
oh, man.
And, cuffed me and dragged me into the living room. I got my fucking underwear on, and they check in the house. And
Did you have anything in that house?
I had 6 pretty good sized safes. No weed. I mean, I had stash, personal
cash.
smoke. I had, it's reasonable sum of cash at the house, couple, 4 or 5 million or something.
Very, very good days at the casino.
Yeah. And so I'm sitting there, and all they did was clear the house of any other individuals that, that might have been there. And they were going to pick me up and walk me out. I'm in my underwear. And I said, "Wait a minute.
I gotta get dressed.
Can I get some fucking clothes?" I said, escort me if you want. If this is, you guys' thing, to that room down the hall where you tackled me, and let me get some clothes. And he said, this one guy goes, "No." He said, "You just sit your ass right there. Tell me where your clothes are. I'll go get them." And I said, "Okay." Like I said, the room just where you tackled me, there's 2 closets. The one closest to the wall, shelves with my jeans and a shirt. Grab jeans, a shirt, and socks, and a pair of shoes, and we're out of here. He gets back. He's not back there 5 seconds. He goes, "Holy shit!" And I yelled, "Wrong closet." He opened the closet up, and he comes back out there, and he goes, "What do you got in them safes back there?"
More money than you've ever seen.
No, I didn't give him anything. I said,
if you are looking to have as much energy as I do, I'm telling you, you have to get yourself an 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover, because even if it's not all of it, it's a lot of the energy I have, because I sleep phenomenally every night. The 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover comes in queen or king sizes. It goes right on top of your current mattress, and it is wired directly into 8 Sleep's proprietary app, which measures your sleep stages throughout the night to optimize your sleep around you. The best way to put it is you will sleep 6 hours and feel like you slept 8. I love it. I love looking at my statistics and seeing when I had a good healthy sleep, when I had a less healthy sleep. Why? There's some stuff I don't even understand, but other stuff is very simple to digest, like tosses and turns, the fact that maybe I didn't have a good resting heart rate throughout the night, which suggests maybe I had caffeine a little bit too early before bed or a little bit too late before bed, things like that. It's awesome. You're going to love it, so you have to check this out. Use that link in my description. Get yourself an 8 Sleep Pod Pro cover. Once again, comes in queen or king sizes, and make sure at checkout, this is very, very important, use the code TRENDIFIER. That's TRENDIFIER. If you use that code, you will get $150 off your order, and you will start sleeping the best you've ever slept today, or the day it gets there, which is usually within a few days or about a week. You're going to love it. Check it out, and it supports the show.
Show me the warrant that says that you can go through my shit, and I'll be glad to open every one of them for you. Well, that's not something they had at that time. They only had a warrant for my arrest. They didn't have a warrant to seize or take anything from me. All they could do was clear the house of anybody that might have been in there other than myself.
That was an oversight.
And they took me out of there. And from there, I went to every one of these branches of law enforcement's office. They all wanted a piece of me. They were all wanted a pat on the back for having done what they did. I went to the DEA, to the Customs, to the FDLE, to the sheriff's, the Naples Sheriff's Trident Task Force office.
They're just walking me through the hallway?
No, they're walking me into each one of these buildings, and they're fingerprinting me and shit and getting their piece of me before they haul me off to the federal building in Fort Myers.
That seems a little excessive. I mean, can't you just fingerprint once?
Well, if you want to call, I would call it excessive. I would call 280 plus federal agents who are a little excessive.
Yeah, probably.
But that's just how it turned out, and that's what happened. And I wound up, what they did was one of my Cuban buddies that I had done some work with, or for some of his friends in Miami on occasion. They put us in the United States Customs headquarters in Naples. They put me in a holding room with Carlos.
Oh, you were with Carlos?
No, not Carlito.
Oh, different
Carlos. This is Carlos,
okay.
My Cuban buddy, who I was, working with, occasionally doing some stuff for his friends and hauling pop for his friends and shit like that. Put us in the same room, chained us down to the same bench together, thinking that we're going to talk to one another like this, and we didn't fucking even look at one another, man. Because we're not stupid. I wasn't fucking born yesterday. This is all new to me, of course, because I'd never been arrested for anything in my life. Nothing.
Yeah, you had no
This is
record.
the first time ever being arrested, and I'm going through this shit. So they haul me up to the federal building, and we're there all day, and there were so many of us that being arrested at that time that they didn't have time to go through the, holding us all in jail in lieu of a huge bond or some shit like that. So they gave everybody a surety bond. Mine was $1 million surety bond.
So you're out.
And they let me go that night at 11 o'clock. I finally got out and got a ride home. But
now what's going to
They had me.
Yeah.
It was over. It was fucking game over.
Your lawyer immediately is like, let's figure out a deal.
It turned out that it was too high profile of a case for him. He's just a, small time fucking Naples attorney.
You had a shitty lawyer.
I had to hire his father-in-law, who was a big time criminal attorney in Baltimore. I had to pay huge dollars to get this guy to get on the case. He wound up doing rather well for me.
Were you able? I mean, if they hadn't had the warrant at the house, did you get those safes out of there?
Oh yeah. The minute they got me to a phone to make my one phone call, I didn't call Dennis. I called my brother.
And he got the money.
I said, dude, you need to get to the house and get that shit out of there before they come and slap a seal on that fucker or something.
This is where you buried the money.
That's where my brother took the money out of the house.
Okay, I see right through you here. But anyway, so you start paying that lawyer. Does he immediately say like, okay, this indictment's pretty fucked? Like, you need to make a deal?
Yeah, he flew down there, and my first meeting with him, one of my first few meetings with him and his son-in-law, who was my attorney all those years. I sat down in front of his desk, and he shoves over at me a stack of papers this deep, which was the discovery that they had gained from all these agencies. It was about almost 3 inches thick. Everybody that had said Tim, anybody that knew anything.
Oh, that's just the Tim files.
This is their discovery. This is the evidence, what they have against me, and they're not allowed to hold anything back. They have to give you everything.
Right.
So there's no surprises. And I started looking at this shit, and I went, "Holy fucking hell, man! This is insurmountable, really."
So this is 1989.
This is still verging on 89. This is still 88 because the whole thing came down. The bust took place on October 19th. I was arrested in October 1988.
And you were arrested with 300 or some other people. Like all Chokolowski.
Ultimately, but at that time, it was the first 38 of us.
Okay, so either way, like a lot.
And then after that, everybody, it started going down like dominoes.
Right.
And what was taking place was purely and simply was that when they started effecting these arrests, they realized that there was no really adults of any significant age involved in what it was they were doing by way of Operation Peacemaker.
Because they were gone.
They were already gotten. Yeah. They were down the road and doing their own thing and got out of it and shit.
What about quickly though? What about the people once the brothers went to prison in '84, and then you said you went and connected with all the people that they used to, like the senior people in Florida, who connected you with Venezuela and Colombia. What about all those senior people?
A lot of them were passed over. They didn't know them. Because it was, we were operating on such a level of sophistication, and I've throughout this whole time period, I'm explaining these scenarios to you, and you can glean from all of that, just how sophisticated this had become.
Right.
And it was as such where, like I said, majority of the people didn't know who the bosses were, didn't care, and those that remained silent and in pretty much in the background, like Billy. He was never Captain Billy, Captain Red.
Right.
He was never indicted. He was never taken because no one ever said his name. I never said anybody's name. I mean, it was just the way it was.
They had you though because but that's the thing.
They followed me.
They followed you, but he's your captain.
No. This is afterwards. It's 84 was when he quit. After this.
Oh, he left the game
after
completely.
Operation Everglades 2 took place.
He left.
He didn't leave. He just quit. He opened up a restaurant in town and started being a restaurateur and quit stone crabbing and running a boat and that kind of stuff and just kind of easing backed his way into the darkness.
And none of that investigation happened until after, so no one knew who it was.
This is 2 years later, 4 years later is when all this other shit took, this Operation Peacemaker took place. And by that time, like I said, 2 years had gone by, which is at that time was the statute of limitations. So some of these older guys just, they didn't give a fuck.
2 years statutes of limitations on millions of tons of weed.
Yeah, go figure. They changed the laws, but didn't change the statutes of limitations.
That's incredible.
So here now we're not looking at, minor slap on the wrists. Now we're all looking at life sentences. And now
they were facing life.
Yeah, I was given 4 indictments.
What did they say?
And on each indictment, there was 4 counts. There's conspiracy to possess, conspiracy to import, and conspiracy to import more than 2,000 kilograms.
Oh, you ran through that in an hour.
So there's 4 indictments. There's $1 million fine for each one of those. That's $16 million on 4 indictments. There's a mandatory 10 years to life on every count. That's 160 years mandatory to life.
So they do it consecutively, not concurrently?
Well, that's yet to be determined.
Oh, so
only the magistrate can determine whether they're concurrent or consecutive.
So they still have discretion over that.
They still have discretion as far as concurrent and consecutive.
Got it.
But if you're given 40 years to life, dude, I mean, what the fuck?
Yeah, fuck it.
That's
federal time, 85%.
I'd still be there.
Yeah.
Or I'd just be getting out.
Yep.
If that were the case. But plainly and simply, the fact that, once the first 38 of us went down and some of the other smaller guys, the bail handlers and things like that. And I had younger guys in their 20s and 21, like I was when I was a kid, when I first started running boats through the islands for me and hauling pot and shit like that. You get one of these smaller guys and you pull him aside and you say, look, dude, they got you. They know who you are. They're telling you, And what happened was the United States government was had done by design rather than accident, given us the opportunity to cooperate. Now, based upon your substantial cooperation, they now have the ability to impart your cooperation to the magistrate. Now she can sentence you below that mandatory.
Oh, really? That was a rule?
Yeah. It's called a Title 18 Rule 35. That's giving your government substantial cooperation in the case that you're involved in.
So your lawyer immediately started this conversation? No.
This is something we picked up on ourselves as a matter of course as we're going through this. It turned out that they knew that 38 of us weren't the whole thing. None of this could all be happening with 38 people.
Well, you were the middleman.
Plus, the guy that was involved in it said that, dude, let's open this Pandora's box.
Which guy?
The rat that was found in Colombia, and they brought him back and said, "Did I tell you that?"
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
So he was still telling them you can get way more.
Yeah, he said, "You're just getting started."
He was a real good employee.
So they started, picking on these younger guys, and they're saying, they're talking on your name, they're coming for you, man. But as the arrests started taking place, and these offers to cooperate were given them, within that cooperation agreement was immunity clause saying that we'll give you immunity from prosecution from anything that you've ever done, so you can open up and tell us without fear of reprisal.
Right.
Tell us everything you know. But we'll hold one count back so that when when everything is said and done with, we'll review your cooperation and we'll give you whatever. We can let you go home if we so choose to, if the magistrate so chooses to. So now you're not bound by that mandatory 40 years to life. So when they gave him that immunity clause for cooperation, what that did was now they're talking your name. And they're talking Jimmy's name, they're talking Teddy's names, and these guys would go back and say, look, they're going to offer you a deal, this cooperation thing, take it. And tell on us who have already been busted, because you can't hurt us. We have immunity from, you see?
Oh, it became like a pyramid scheme of immunity.
Exactly. You're not hurting us. So to get out of that life sentence, tell them my name. And it didn't matter.
Signed. Yeah.
And it didn't matter how many people were being picked up on these charges. It didn't matter if a lot of them were saying the same name. All that told the government was that they're getting all the right people.
Because did you sign something already?
I signed nothing.
You had signed nothing.
I couldn't cooperate. I couldn't give them what they wanted. They wanted to know who's this people in Miami you're always seeing? Who are you flying out of the country and where are you going?
So you might be really fucked.
Yeah, I mean, even though...
But you're telling all these other guys to say your name.
No. The guys that have already been busted and whatnot are telling them. I'm out of that loop.
Oh,
the crew guys and everybody else working are saying, look, here's how you dodge this thing. Telling us, because we've already got immunity.
And don't tell on Tim.
Well, none of that was spoken. If it was, I wasn't privy to it. I was kind of, I didn't want to know. I was too consumed with my own fucking what was going on, dude. I had 160 fucking years. Everybody's on their own.
And why did you feel like you couldn't give them information?
Well, for the simple fact that, although throughout all the years of doing this and being raised in this industry, there was no violence, like I explained that. But if you go and throw one of these fucking guys, like a Cuban in Miami, Carlito Leo, or Jamaican dudes that I work with, or the boss in Colombia, I go saying that shit, dude, they're gonna, forget about the friend thing and and all that nonviolent thing. You go throw them under the bus, they're going to come back at you and do what they're very fucking good at, is kill you and everybody in your family and kill the dog and cat too.
Yeah,
that's just who they are.
And you knew this.
I'm fucking right. I knew that because I told them, look, I can't do this because what you're asking for me is a death sentence. You either give me life in prison or you let this fucking guy shoot me in the fucking head.
Who were you talking with? Like, what was there one agency in particular, like U.S. Customs guy?
At first, it was the investigators for the United States Prosecutor's Office.
Okay.
They were the ones who were doing the initial interrogation of me, and that didn't begin until after I was. Of course, I had gotten out on that surety.
Yeah, you're out of jail right now.
But I fucked it up by giving them a dirty urine. I'm still smoking, bugging weed, right? And they wound up popping me in drug tests, and they fucking threw my ass in jail, and I didn't get back out.
Where were you in jail?
I was in Fort Myers County Jail. They had designated an entire cell block on the 4th floor for federal prisoners because there was so fucking many of us. They could, So I sat up there for, God, it must have been, I think it was 8 or 10 months or so before I was finally, run through the paces and got my sentencing and all that. But
so how did that go? If you couldn't give up anybody, like how did this go down?
What happened was, and again, very serendipitous, and another one of those awesome sequence of events taking place whereby I couldn't give them names, but there was a period of time there for several months while I was in federal lockdown in Fort Myers where these investigators would come and take me out, handcuff me, shackle my legs, belly chain me, and chain me up in my legs and my feet, and take me out of the jail and walk me around the building on the sidewalk outside. I'm doing this convict shuffle. Good morning. Hey, how you doing? Like this. They take me to a federal building around the corner and down this dark corridor and put me in a room and shut the door, and it was like a little tiny space with a big glass window and one of those little bank tuck things like this. And in walks this man and this woman with identical brown vested suits, and they walk up to the window and they slap their little gold treasury baggage up against the window. And I went, fuck, just like that. And Susan Deltuva, the United States prosecutor who was prosecuting me on this case, she was in the next room listening. She comes bolting through the door and she goes, Timmy, look, she says,
Timmy.
She goes, this is, everybody calls me Timmy.
You're facing life at Timmy.
Yeah. And she says, this is not what you think it is, Timmy. And I go, well, Susan, why don't you tell me what exactly it is? Because if it's cooperation, you just open the door and take me home, back to my cell, because that ain't happening. She goes, no. What we'd like to know is how you guys were able to do this all these years and get away with it, and we couldn't catch you. And I said, well, bingo, game over. I can tell you all that, but I won't give you any names. If you can glean from anything that I'm going to describe to you a name, more power to you. But names are out of the question because of that simple, I wouldn't.
So
they would have found me in debt. I've been erased.
So the only thing they really knew was what they had seen on land of possession, and clearly then putting together that you guys were importing it. They didn't know how it happened.
The only thing they had at that time was no visible evidence of us ever having touched anything. What they did was, the only link they had between us was telephone conversations and telephone records.
And the eyewitness.
I called this guy called him this guy, then this guy called this guy, and that's how they linked us all together, through telephone conversations. That's all they had.
And the guy who cooperated. Though.
And the guy who was telling on everybody.
Right.
So when it came down to that point, and they wanted to know how the fuck I did this, I said, well, I can tell you that. You dumb motherfuckers, And the first couple of questions out of my mouth to these two Treasury agents was, do you understand the geography of Everglades City? And they're
Take some notes.
And they're like, yeah. And I said, well, okay, how many roads in there and how many roads out of there are there? Well, there's one. Well, yeah, there's fucking one. Now, how many direct links to Miami from that little island to Miami are there? There's one. US 41. There's only one fucking road.
Did you sign something before you said this?
Nope.
You just started talking.
Well, yeah.
But they might be like, oh, thanks for all that information. You're fucked.
Well, you know what? I was fucked anyways.
Yeah, but you could say, all right, call my lawyer.
But they wanted cooperation. This was my cooperation to them.
I'm saying, but you need to have a contract. I mean, obviously it worked out for you, but I'm saying they could have said, fuck you.
It was verbally agreed upon between my attorney and the U.S. prosecutor that, he knew ahead of time that I was going to be questioned and this and that and whatever. He didn't coach me on, what to do or what not to say or anything like that. He said, you can cooperate if you want, don't if you don't. And I chose not to, simply because, I'd have been erased. And, there was no doubt about that. So
what made you nervous that these were two Treasury agents in particularly?
Treasury is pretty high up on the list when it comes to law enforcement agencies.
Yeah.
And they pull a lot of government weight behind them. And the type of thing that they wanted to know led directly to it went from them straight to the United States prosecutor's office. There was nobody in between. They didn't have to go up a chain of, of priority, if you will, with regards to law enforcement. And I knew that, I could go ahead and tell you this, because it's no skin off of my ass, the game's over, fuck it. And I said, once I told them that, there's one fucking way to get there, and that's down in US 41. And 99 times out of 100, we're probably waving at your ass while there's, hundreds of tons of shit's going down the fucking road right in front of you, And I said, besides that, how do you think I got that shit to Miami? I said, I didn't get it over there on the backs of fucking pelicans and porpoises, dude. It went down that one fucking road, millions of pounds over the years, So I start, they make this a habit of every other day or so. They take me out, break me in this room, and they ask me questions and shit like this. And it got to the point where I guess they weren't believing what I was telling them. It was so fantastic for them to grasp, because they had no fucking clue, dude. I mean, it was just, they were that stupid.
At one point, did you say, you ever see any cows wash up on the shore?
Yeah, but that's what we told that boat captain. The second time we went out to unload the boat, he did that same fucking thing.
Oh, with the cows?
Yeah, but this time he had not only cows, he had goats and pigs and chickens, and there were monkeys, these little fucking squirrely ass fucking spider monkey looking fuckers that it turns out that they, if the boat manages to get ashore and get loaded, because a lot of times, they have just as much problem in South America getting loaded as we do getting unloaded.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no free ride down there, no matter what. But if the boat manages to get to shore and not offshore, where they bring in small boats out and loading it every night, little bits at a time like that, the monkeys will get on board and start eating the seeds. Then they get all fucked up and fall asleep among these fucking bales of shit, and then they get offshore and they're trapped.
So they didn't drown. They found their way.
So we get up there and open the gates, and now come these fucking cows are falling in the water again, and all those monkeys went straight to the fucking light mast and the radio antennas, like they knew what was happening. And it was a hysterical sight to see, but
I'm just trying to picture like 30 cows washing up on like the shore and people being like, what the fuck? That's going to be in a government investigation right away. That's
why we stopped it dead. We said, look, this is not, this is the second time. We said, don't come back.
No more animals.
This won't happen ever again for two reasons. First of all, the poor fucking cows, man. Second of all, it's one thing to be walking down the beach and shelling and you trip over a dead fish, but it's very much another to be walking down the beach shelling and trip over a dead fucking cow. That's going to raise some fucking eyebrows, right? So we dumped his ass and we never saw him again. Beyond that, but. So, I go to telling them this, and this is my version of cooperation with them, but, they ultimately decided that it wasn't substantial enough because they wanted the meat. They wanted the big dudes. They wanted the names and that. Well, that wasn't going to fucking happen for sure, like I said.
But you helped yourself.
Yeah, in a matter of speaking, but all that it didn't get me out of any, it got me out of a lot of significant time, but what it wound up doing was they capped my sentence with regards to that bit of cooperation. They capped my sentence at 20 years. So
they capped it.
They capped it. I couldn't get more than 20, but I couldn't get less than 10 because the mandatory still stood. They narrowed it down to one count.
And then your attorney could argue in front of the judge and say, look, he did all this, and this in cooperation.
She knew that at sentencing, and she praised me in her own way by giving them information that was invaluable to law enforcement at that time by explaining to them exactly how this inner workings, this mechanism worked, and how ridiculously stupid they all were of it all, and ignorant of the whole thing. Once I opened that can of worms and started telling them how dumb they were, like I said, they kept taking me out and questioning me and asking me questions and that. And then one day they took me out and I thought I was going back to the same fucking place, but they went right past that door. It took me in the next door down. It was this little room about the size of this one we're in. One guy in there and a polygraph.
Oh, because they want to know if
they want to know if what I was telling them was the truth, because they didn't believe me. All this money and all the pot and the millions of fucking pounds of shit. They wanted to make sure that I wasn't just giving them a story. I walked out of that room with a big ass fucking grin on my face, and I looked back at them, and they're all scratching their fucking head, going, "You passed."
You imagine being a polygrapher, like, wait, I'm sorry, is this question correct? Did you watch 150 cows drown in the Gulf of Mexico? Am I really asking that?
Well, see, on the front page of the Naples Daily News that day I was arrested, it said under the headlines, big front page news, area part of U.S. pot dragnet, said in letters about this big. And then in the subheading beneath that, it said, agents say 38 helped import over 150 tons. Well, what they ultimately began to realize, or I explained to them, and they found out was the truth, that 150 tons was only about a week's work between all of us crews that were working. So that's when they went, oh, wait a minute, that can't be. Well, that's when they hooked me to the polygraph, and I said, yeah.
That's how much we moved.
It can be. That's just a week's work, man. If you're pulling down 28 nights in a row, like I said earlier, and I did a rough calculation for my book to the tune of about 1.6 million pounds in 28 nights, went across that, on and off that little island, and people still when I tell them that, and I know what I'm going to get, as far as commentary about the ridiculousness of how that sounds, and I get it. Trust me, I understand, dude. If anybody understands how ridiculous that sounds, it's me. But I wasn't, the subject of a federal operation involving over 280 federal agents from all over the country for nothing, for a boatload of weed, or shit like that.
That's it.
It was significant.
No weapons.
And it was significant beyond their wildest imagination. They had no fucking clue the depth at which we were wading.
One thing. That's all it is. That's what's crazy. It's literally one thing. We're just moving bags. That's it. Just middleman stuff.
Yeah.
Wow. So they at least they capped it. You go in front of the magistrate. How much time did she end up giving you?
She gave me the mandatory 10.
Okay, so she liked you.
She acknowledged the fact that I was willing to give this information, but they didn't deem it substantial enough because they wanted they wanted to go beyond me.
Right.
But she wound up giving me that 10 mandatory.
With time served?
Well, only the time served in county lockup. Yeah.
Because you've been there for almost a year.
It was 8 months or so.
Okay, so you got that. And then you go to prison. How long did you end up serving?
I wound up doing a full 4 flat.
Wow, you got out in 4?
Yeah. Well, the reason for that is, quite simply, as we were talking earlier, when you get sentenced to federal prison, you have to work. You don't just sit around. You're
Right.
either mopping floors, you're working in the kitchen, or you're doing some kind of work that you're making 3 cents a fucking hour for. And then the second year you get maybe 4 or 5 cents an hour or some shit like that. But they, dude, I lose track of this sometimes. They,
You were saying you did a full 4.
right. So
As we'll talk about
I get to
now, too.
prison and they, they assign me work in construction and, building and keeping up the prison. And there's no fucking way. I don't want to do this shit.
Right.
So I did that job for about 3 weeks or so, and I had met a guy out on the rec yard at the weight pile. His name was Raleigh. I call him. You'll meet him in the book. He was a law clerk in the education building for the legal library, and every federal or state institution is required by law to have prisoners to have access to legal material.
Right.
So we have a full-blown federal legal library at the prisoner's disposal to work on their own cases or whatever that being. Me being a clerk, learning how to shepherdize and research cases and to find them the particular case law and sentence that they can use to back up their pleas for whatever it is they're getting.
So Rolando got you that job.
Raleigh takes me down and introduces me to a guy named Dennis Lehman, who was a head law clerk. He was also an inmate. He was a bank robber who had been in for 28 years before I had met him that day. He had a 52-year federal sentence
For bank robbery.
Right. Well, the sad part about that was that he didn't even rob the fucking bank. He was the pilot, the getaway pilot for the 2 guys that actually robbed the bank. One guy, they got them too. But one guy got 6 years and one guy got 12. Dennis got 52. Why?
Jesus Christ.
Dennis was flying cocaine from Mexico to Nevada for a number of years and they couldn't catch him.
Oh.
So they thought when they nailed him with something, they nailed him, screwed him to the fucking wall. They gave him, which I don't know if it might even be today, the most time given to a person for that particular crime.
Wow.
He's in the Guinness Book for that.
Jesus Christ.
So he liked me right off the bat. Started calling me Timmy like everybody else does right away, So I okayed it through all the powers that be, and I wound up, transferring my job down to the law clerk, and I did as a matter of course, having to learn that job, and wanting to be obviously as I was through every part of my life, the best at whatever it was I was doing. I had taken a correspondence course at the University of Honolulu and got a degree in law.
No shit.
Yeah.
You have a law degree.
Yeah.
Wow.
I used that to my own advantage by writing my own plea to the Middle District Courts in Florida for reduction of sentence, citing cooperation, because I just out of nowhere, I'm sitting at my desk one day and I'm just flipping pages through this dictionary. It's called Black's Legal Dictionary, and it's a dictionary from which all defense or prosecuting attorneys in the country define their legalese out of this book. So I'm flipping through it, and I just come to where it said cooperation, and I read it, and it basically what it says as far as definition is that if you ask me for something and I give it to you, I have essentially cooperated with you. And I went, bing, fucking light went on. And I go to typing and I write my own brief for reduction of sentence based on cooperation. And I cited Black's Legal Dictionary as precedent for that definition and submitted it to the court.
And you got it.
And a month later, they wanted to writ me out of prison to send me back for a review in front of the judge to her take on the my plea for reduction of sentence. But I chose not to go because here now we're almost 3.5 years in now, and it took me almost that much time to get from the center of the room to the edge of the wall by the window.
All right, let's talk about coming in though, because you were a Midwestern kid who obviously got caught up in your 20s with some wild shit, and it happened so fast, and you're young and you're just getting after it and whatever, and now suddenly you're 28, 29 years old, whatever, right. It comes crashing down, and this is the first time you're ever arrested, as you said. So it's never been and I've kind of asked you this throughout to get your feel for when were you thinking there was going to be a problem or something like that? It's never really been a thought for you, prison. Like, you only ever thought, like, oh, maybe I'll get 8 months if somehow I get caught. So now you're caught, you cooperate, you go to prison, and when you walk in there, you're facing 10 years. Like, how shocking is that? Like, what's going through your mind?
Well, first of all, when it involved that extraordinary amount of time, even one life sentence, well, you got to stick 16 of them on there, man. That's just stupid.
Yeah.
But those were the guidelines as they were written in that day. And they were written that way because the old guidelines weren't having the desired effect that they really wanted. So They had to do something about that. And we wound up being given that opportunity, a lot of guys given that opportunity to cooperate and get themselves out of that thing. And I was ultimately given that 10 years and submitting that reduction of sentence from that 10 based upon the notion that they honestly, and the U.S. prosecutor told me this one day herself out of her own mouth. She said, Timmy, we just want to stop this and be done with it. We don't want to continue this for another decade of this goings on, And I said, well, I can understand that. And basically out of that came a simple fact that a year earlier, they were sending the second and first generation to prison for 14 months, 12 months, 20, 36 months and shit like that. So they honestly really weren't willing to put kids in prison for the rest of their lives for what guys were getting only 30 months for a year before.
Wow.
So they gave them that open window, that opportunity. They didn't tell us that this was an opportunity. We figured it out. Hey, do this. Tell them, you're cooperating, but you're not hurting anybody, kind of a deal. So I submitted my brief for reduction of sentence, and I asked my brother, I called him one night, and I said, I asked him to go to that, the hearing that day, and, I'll call you later that evening, and you tell me what happened, what the judge, figured out for me. So I'm sweating fucking bullets, man. I'm like, if it didn't work, I've got,
6 more
because
years.
of it's mandatory. I've got, you're gonna do better than 87% of that time because they did away with parole. They did away with good time, except for after the first year, you have 57 days a year good time. That's it. Where before that, under the old law. Now, they wound up sentencing me under the old law. But the judge found a section in the old law that didn't provide for parole. She snuck me, man. She got me. But I sent my brother there to hear her take on my reduction of sentence brief, and I waited 3 hours or so in line to get on the phone that night. And when I finally got a hold of my brother, I said, "Come on, man." I said, "What happened? Tell me about it." And he, first thing out of his mouth was, he says, "Were you fucking that prosecutor or something?" Yeah, because she talked pretty good about you, man. I'm like, "No, dude, no, fuck no." I said, "Come on, let's stop fucking around. What happened?" He says, "She gave you 4 years." And I said, "No, come on, stop fucking with me. Come tell me the truth."
So you're coming
he
home
said,
soon.
"She gave you 4 fucking years, dude."
Wow.
And here I'm 3.5 years in now.
You're like,
I'm short by 6 months, and I screamed. I fell over and about pulled the phone off the fucking wall. That would have pissed everybody off back there in line.
You, I'm getting out of
here.
here.
And here I am now. I'm 6 months short.
That's amazing.
So it just, one thing after another led to that, and my getting into prison, my falling in line with Dennis and those guys in the legal library and learning my shit and how to manipulate my way through the law books and shepherdizing and producing backup scenario cases, because every case in the federal judicial system or system of jurisprudence is based on precedent.
Yes.
And what you do when you research and shepherdize and find case law to support your argument, you find throughout all of these, if you've seen on movies in a lawyer's office, they've got all these books, rows and rows and shelves of all what looks like the same book. Well, those are the case law. That's the precedent. That's the case law. They cannot, by law, give you more time for the same type of crime than they've given anybody else. It has to be uniform. It has to be some semblance of uniformity and equalization to it. So if I say I robbed a bank for 10 grand and I got 25 years and this guy only got 5, and his case is identical to mine, they can't do that.
What about Dennis?
Dennis is different. Dennis's case is there were no case law, no precedent to back up that law, to back up that maneuver that they pulled on him.
Really?
Yeah. But
so they can still fuck you.
They can do whatever they want, dude. They make the fucking laws.
Yeah, that's true.
But when it came down to that, and ultimately, they couldn't argue the simple fact that their own definition, Black's legal dictionary, defines what they did to me regarding cooperation as wrong and not just. They gave me more, and I cited cases, regarding cooperation and other cases that went similar to mine, and that's what citing case law is all about. You find out through all of those books that are updated almost every week, and that was part of my job, was inserting addendums to the back of all these books of new case law that's coming in, to the courts. And that is at your disposal to find cases that parallel yours, that allow them to say, okay, well, this is not fair. It should be treated as this was.
Right.
That's how they wound up giving me, giving me the 4 years below the mandatory minimum that they did.
So you end up getting out at 4, and I always think about this though, like 4 years is still 4 years, man. At the 8 to 10 months before that, it's kind of like you're in limbo every day. You're not really thinking about the time so much as like you're figuring out your case, right? It's
too much time to grasp.
Yeah.
The reality of it. Like even when they were talking life sentences, I never got that cold chill, and I wanted to shit myself, because it was too unreal to fathom.
Right.
Even 10 years is hard to fathom, when you're standing in the midst of it. Until you get in there and you hear that steel door go clang, and it all becomes fucking real.
Where were you in prison?
I was sent to Tallahassee, FCI, Federal Correctional Institution in Tallahassee. And prior to that, my release from county jail, as a transfer point, I was taken to Metropolitan Correctionals in Miami, MCC.
There were some serious people in there.
Yeah, there was some. They were all bundled into the same group because that's a transportation hub for the marshals, because Eglin Air Force or Homestead Air Force Base is right down the street, and that's the airport in which the federal marshals operated their Con Air out of. The jet that they transfer all the prisoners around. That's the federal marshals' job, is to do that. You
meet anyone cool in there?
Yeah. Well, actually, I did actually. I wound up being a bunkmate of a gentleman by the name of Saltwater Gambino.
Carlo's brother.
Old man, Papa Gambino. Yeah.
No shit.
Yeah.
Carlo Gambino, for people out there, was basically the capo di tutti capi of the Italian-American mafia for years. So his brother was in MCC.
He was in there.
He had to be old as hell.
He was an old man. He was a pretty old dude. He was pretty cool. He was really heavy Italian accent in his English, And I had no idea who the guy was, even when I first, I was taken there, and when you're taken from one prison to another, they put you in lockdown for about 3 days. They put you in the hole so they can review your file and your case to see that maybe there's something that in there that they shouldn't release you to general population for. Like if I was had anything to do with women or children or stupid shit like that, it was a Chester or some shit. They could literally kill you.
Right.
Because they'll find out what you're in there for eventually. I don't know how it works and how it happens, but eventually they'll find out what your case is all about. So I did my 3 days, but I was in there with a guy named Jimmy Papadopoulos, and he was part of the crew that worked the deal that got Gambino and his nephew busted, a 2,700-pound cocaine deal.
That'll do it.
Yeah. So they were in the midst of going to do their time. So Jimmy was in a day before me, so he got out a day before me. And
out of the
3 day holding period. So when I finally was released to general population into what they called the glass house in MCC, that's where all the newbies come, the fresh fish come. And from there, they're either designated and taken off by Con Air to their designated point of sentencing or prison of sentencing, or they're sentenced to stay there. So I get out and I get my bedroll, and I'm assigned a bunk by the cop who's sitting in there at a desk, and he's got the bed book, they call it, with your picture and your name and your number. Mine's 09498 018. That's my number, my federal prison number. I'll never forget that fucking number. And my bunk just happened to be right next to the television. And that television is on. There's guys sitting around watching TV all day long. And I said, I went back to the dorm cop, and I said, look, I said, can I please have a different bunk assignment, away from the TV, because it's just too noisy right there. And he said, he was okay. He didn't give me any shit about it. He said, oh, go find a bunk somewhere that suits you and come back and tell me where it is, and I'll move your shit to that spot. So immediately, now this is a 2-level dormitory style open. I mean, the bunks are all over the floor and down below. And there's a place to walk through between them. And up above, and they call it glass house because it's glass pane windows from the floor almost to the ceiling on 3 walls. And you go up the stairs. There's a tier upstairs, like a balcony, that wraps the entire bottom floor. So I go up the stairs and I pass the bathroom, and the wall cuts back in, and that's where the bunks start. And as I was walking past that, I hear, "Hey, Timmy!" And I look over, and there's Jimmy, the guy I was in the hall with. And he's sitting there on 2 guys on this side on the bottom bunk, and this little old man sitting on the bunk, opposite them. And he says, "What are you doing, man?" I said, "Dude, I'm looking for a new bunk. I'm looking for a place to hang out." He says, "Right there." And he points to the bunk on top of this old man, over the top of this old guy. And
Gambino.
yeah. Wow. I didn't know that. I didn't know who he was at the time. And so I went down and told the dude, dorm hack, and he changed my shit. I went up there and put my shit out there, and I sat down and we start bullshitting, and this little old man sitting next to me, and he goes, and he's sitting there with his blanket over him. And he says, "Man, it's a fucking cold in this place, isn't it?" And he's sitting there shivering. And I put my hand on his shoulder and I says, "Hang on a minute, I got you." So I climbed up on my bunk, and I had learned, having been locked down for this amount of time already, that the vents that the air conditioning came out of were 2 levers, two sets of louvered vents, one this way and one this way, with a space in between. Well, I just folded up a newspaper and slipped it in there and shut the air off from blowing down on top of everybody. And it was about 5 minutes or so go by. He takes his blanket off and he goes, "You're a smart guy," he says. Puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, "You're a pretty smart guy." He says, "I like you, man." He says, "I tell you what." And it was a Saturday. The next morning was Sunday morning, and they make homemade, the guys in the kitchen, there was prisoners. They're the cooks and the chefs and all that kind of shit. And they make homemade donuts on Sunday morning, and, a nice breakfast, whatever you want, kind of a thing. And surprisingly, the meals were really very good.
In prison?
Yeah, in federal prison.
You're the first person who's ever said that to me.
I was surprised at that, But,
really?
Yeah. And that compound, the prison itself was almost butted right up next to the Metropolitan Zoo, the Miami Zoo. Right? So consequently, being that close, they had peacocks walking around the compound inside the fucking prison.
Oh, come on.
That came over from the zoo next door. Just chilling, man. And they let them stay in there because, if anybody gets out, you get near these fucking things, they start screaming like little girls. If you've ever heard of peacocks,
so they're like security.
Yeah. Have you ever heard a peacock scream? It sounds like a little girl screaming like that. Right? So, but they had a walkway around a small pond that was in the middle of the compound and like that, and a bench and shit. So he says, "You know what?" He says, "Timmy," he says, "tomorrow morning," he says, "we're gonna go to the chow hall. We're gonna get some nice donuts and a coffee." He says, "and then we're going to take a walk around the lake." He says, "Does that sound okay to you?" And I said, "Yeah, sure. Why not?" And the whole time we were having this conversation and whatnot, the guys are walking past, paying respects. "Hello, Papa. How you doing, Papa?" Like this. And I'm thinking, what the fuck, So he gets up to go around the corner of the bathroom to take a piss, and I lean over and I say, "Jimmy, who the fuck is this guy?" He says, "That's Papa." I said, "Papa fucking who?" "Papa Gambino."
Oh my God.
My bunkmate wound up being Salvador.
Wow.
Yeah. And he, we got to chatting, and he took a shining to me, he called me Timmy, just like everybody else. And, he and his nephew and Jimmy were involved in the same cocaine deal, and they all got a significant amount of time. And he was impressed by the way, they knew that I had 10 years mandatory, and he was impressed, I guess, and by the way I was able to be as relaxed as I was, knowing I had this much ahead of me. And he wanted to know if I would, maybe have a conversation with his nephew about, because he's having a real hard time dealing with the amount of time that he's gotten. And ultimately, I said, I wound up telling him,
if you are looking to search the web privately and not have all these websites track you when you leave, check out my friends over at Privado VPN. Privado is the VPN company that gives you full privacy while losing you absolutely no speed And it allows you to use the VPN on up to 10 different devices at a time. I have 2. You can use it on 10. It gives you the same utility all around. It's easy to use. We love that. So if you use the link in my description, you will go to my landing page with the site, and you will see a plan there for $4.99 a month. It's the same one I use. Like I said, it's very, very easy to use. You get used to it right away. It's clicking one button and boom, it's on. You got your privacy, your internet surfing. It's wonderful. So check it out. It supports the show, and you're going to love it.
I'd be happy to talk to him. I'd be glad to talk with him. But, and in the end of it all, he's going to have to learn how to do this time himself. I can't tell him how to do it, because everybody does their time differently. And we talked about this earlier too, after being in there, I can't remember how many guys I've seen just get crazy and run for the fence, thinking they're going to get out of there, but it never happens.
It's one of those things that, like, if you haven't been in that position, I don't think you could possibly understand.
You can't.
As I was telling you, it's just like, we talk about this stuff like it's nothing. Like, oh, life in prison, 25 years, 5 years, 10. This is time, man. Yeah.
You have to understand that, even still, my trying to explain it to anybody, even you guys, about doing time and having to understand how to do it on your own, because you take, say, the past 10 years of your life, and you try to recall how old you were and what you were doing and where you might have been and what you were into 10 years ago. And how much time and how many days have passed, individual days and individual happenings and circumstances and things taking place. Every single day is a happening of its own for 10 fucking years. Yeah. And when you watch a movie, a prison movie or anything like that, you're just getting glimpses of a person's life in prison, and you think, I could do that. But what you're not getting and you're not grasping in reality is the day-to-day goings on. The politics, the shit you have to put up with inmates that so deserve to be there, and then some that really don't, Right. And I say that only because I'll cite 2 specific incidences regarding people that absolutely didn't deserve to be in prison. One guy I met got 14 months for destruction of federal property. He was in a 7-Eleven buying stamps in a machine like that, and the stamp didn't come out. So he's banging this motherfucker. He backs up and he gives it a kick. And while he's doing that, the woman behind the counter is calling the cops.
Come on.
Guy's in here beating up on the stamp machine. The cops pull up. Destruction of federal property.
Don't they have it on camera? Felony. Don't they have it on camera?
They didn't have CT at that time.
Oh, my God. 14 months for kicking a stamp machine.
Destruction of federal property. It's a felony. It's a federal crime now he's committing in a 7-Eleven. Another guy, check this out. He's doing 13 months, this guy's doing, for assaulting a federal employee. He's walking his dog down the sidewalk, on a leash, mind you. Here comes the mailman walking with his cart with the mail the other direction. He gets up close to him, and his dog starts barking, like this. First thing this fucking mailman does is pull out his mace and gives the dog a squirt. This guy goes off. He pummels the shit out of that fucking mailman. Assault on a federal employee.
Come on.
Assaulting a federal employee, you get 13 fucking months for that.
13 months for beating up a mailman.
Beating the mailman up because he maced his dog. Now, that's why I say some people absolutely do not deserve to be there, but there are others that, they're home. That's where they need to fucking be.
Yes.
Because I've seen them row the revolving door. Hey, dude, I'm back. Yeah, hey, brother. This kind of shit. Back for another round. Who the fuck wants another round of this shit? Anybody with any, intelligence whatsoever has to spend one night in fucking jail. That's enough. You don't want to go back to that fucker again, let alone for 10 fucking years or more.
Yeah.
So it is what it is. Prison is what it is. And then in those days, it wasn't like you hear now, like in state prisons and stuff with the the gangs and the cliques and all that fucking stupid shit going on. That sort of stuff didn't really come into existence as full blown as it appears to be on television in those days. There were separations between the black inmates and the Hispanic inmates, being Cuban mostly. We kind of kept our distance a little bit, and the whites, of course, like that, with some intermingling going on because of the, based on your level of intelligence and your ability to, to get along with people in a scenario such as that, and the place that you're being put in. But in my case, there was, fortunately for a lot of us, ultimately there were so many of us that had gotten sentenced and sent to jail. Over 280 ultimately out of Southwest Florida and Florida in itself through Operation Peacemaker alone. Yeah. There were 250 plus during the first 2 Operation Evergladeses, but those were under other guidelines. Now us third generation guys, there was just so many of us that the Federal Bureau of Prisons is obligated, if they can, to keep you as close to your home area as possible to allow you to get visits from family. Make it easier on family to get you a visit. Now, Tallahassee Federal Prison being one of only 3 prisons in Florida at that time, in northern Florida, federal institutions, that and there being so many of us, hell, at one point there was, I think, 23 of us all together in the same prison. So we kind of kept to ourselves, and some of the old generation, other generation was just getting out, and us kids are coming in, but at that time there was always a buddy around somewhere, like that.
It's interesting how that happens, and like how they, you even see it though with like dangerous cliques and stuff. Like they'll have some of the mobsters together, or like and then again, like even the people who don't know each other, prisons can be such a, because they're not correctional facilities, obviously.
There's no correcting going on.
Yeah.
That's the furthest thing from their mind is trying to, there's no such thing as rehabilitation.
Right.
That's bullshit.
It's like,
only if you want it to be.
These people, they're from interesting environments where obviously crime was going on around them, and then if they go to prison young, it's like college for them.
Right.
I had my friend Dan Thayer in here. I was telling you a little bit about this earlier, but he's amazing because he's an exception to the rule. He got thrown in jail for 7 years at age 15 because some cop came up behind him, and he was a big kid, and he turned around and like kind of defended himself and hit the guy. Right. And never mind you, then 12 cops beat the shit out of him, but they still gave him 7 years. How does
none of this surprise me?
Right. And so, he was molded by the system. Right. And then he was life of crime for 20 years. And it took him his last bid. He went in for 2 years, and the state of Florida declared him incorrigible. The judge wanted to put him in jail for life for like possessing like a pill or something, but he couldn't. So he said, I'm giving you 2 years, and I'm making you do it at, I forget which prison it was, but the prison in Florida that has death row. So he'd be an
Stark.
Maybe. I don't know. I forget. But like he'd be an orderly on death row.
Right.
And he figured it out himself in there. He like had his coming to Jesus moment.
Epiphany.
Yes.
This is not me.
And he turned his entire life around. It's like this unbelievable guy. He owns a couple businesses. People love him and mentors a lot of people. But like, not a lot of people get the chance to do that.
No.
Like
I said, rehabilitation takes place only if you want it to take place.
Yes.
You take it upon yourself. The resources are put in front of you to take advantage of. Whether or not you do or don't is up to you.
Right.
And there are a lot of avenues of rehabilitation, if that's what you choose to call it, available to you in those scenarios, in those prison scenarios. And in my case, being a law clerk, and I take advantage of that,
Clearly.
Any opportunity that I can to learn better that place in which I was put. Nothing I could do about being in prison, and after a while, you learn to look to not look beyond the fences, because that world out there doesn't mean anything to you anymore. All it does is bring heartache and resentment, and it can turn you inside out, and it can eat at your brain. And like I said, I've seen guys literally run to the fence and start climbing that fucker. In their state of mind, not knowing full well they're not going to get over that fucking fence.
They're going
as
crazy.
Soon as they touch it, they know where they're at. The light goes on in the fucking monitoring room inside the main gates in the prison and the control room, because on the interior fence is a wire strung, real thin wire strung above the top of it called a snitch wire. So when you touch that fence, a light will go on in the control room and tell them exactly where you touched the fence. And it's a 24-hour, 2 trucks and guns and guard towers and guns and rifles and shit, 365 days a year, 24/7, circling that prison. There's a short 10-foot fence inside with razor wire. There's a killing field of about 15, 20 feet inside, covered in razor wire, and an even taller fence outside you got to get over with razor wire on top of it. Now, you're not going to get through that.
No.
But it's just that state of mind in which they find themselves that they just go running. And being a law clerk as I was at that time, my entire time being a law clerk, I probably did, while I was in there, 40 divorces I wrote for guys that weren't going to get out, in any short time at all, and decided that they should split from their wives and allow them to go on and, have their life.
Wow.
And I got really
That's
very
heavy.
good at doing divorce. I did my own, as a matter of fact, after I was home and got married and got, married. And
Later
on, after I got home.
Yeah, because that's the other thing here. You, this all happened, so you got out of jail. You were young. You were what, like 34, 35 when you got out of jail?
32, I think, somewhere like that.
So you got your whole life in front of you and everything. This is back in 93.
Fortunate to get my life back.
And what did you, did you have any temptation to go back to it?
No, God, no. No. Because
that's good.
The federal magistrate at my time of sentencing looked me dead in the eye, and she was quite serious. Her position as a federal magistrate was given her by Reagan. Mm. And federal magistrates have that position for life. Mm-hmm. And it can't be taken away from them. She was very serious and very diligent in what she was doing. She even wrote, she was quoted in the newspaper saying, I have a mission. I have a mission to do what I'm doing. And she looked me dead in the eye and she said, Mr. McBride, at time of sentencing, she said, after she sentenced me to the mandatory 10, I had the sentence capped at 20 in lieu of everything that I told them about how stupid they were and all this kind of shit, giving them that invaluable law enforcement, vaccines look. She thanked me for that and appreciated it and said that after she sentenced me to 10 years, she said, Mr. McBride, if I ever, for whatever circumstances, ever hear of you in any courtroom in this United States being brought before a magistrate for these type of crimes, I will warehouse you for the rest of your life. And that's when I went, yes, ma'am. You won't see me again.
Say no more.
That was all I needed to hear. And that resonates inside my brain every time this topic comes up.
Wow.
I can hear her. I can see her looking right at me, telling me that. Look at me. I mean, a dead, cold stare. Look at me right in the eye. I will warehouse you for the rest of your life. And she was fucking serious.
Well, good for you for hearing
going
the
back
message.
to that shit, man,
Yeah.
there's no fucking way. It's just,
So what did you do?
I learned, I got two things out of that, and I picked up on this from a guy I know. His name is Brian O'Day. He was a smuggler back in the days, and his claim to fame was I don't know, maybe 100,000 or so pounds of Asian weed that was brought into the Gulf of Alaska from Asia, and they put it aboard a fishing processing boat, and they packaged it and froze it in fish boxes, and they brought it ashore in Washington, and right at the docks, and they're unloading into the tractor-trailer trucks, and they would have an actual box of fish with frozen fish in it sitting different places on the boat, and a guy every now and then would knock one of them over, and fish would spill out on the deck to kind of distract from, maybe there's something nefarious going on, if you will, or rather but I came to terms with this, and I got two things out of this whole lifestyle, or if that's, for the lack of a better way of putting it. I learned what a house full of money looks like, but I also learned at the same time what very little difference in my life it made. So I have no compunction whatsoever to ever go back to that, because I had, reached the pinnacle in sentencing and in smuggling. I couldn't top that.
Yeah, you couldn't. You're never going to get above that.
And now that they know the whole workings and how it happens, there's just no fucking way it could ever happen like that.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen even at the time it was going on. That was the only place in the world that this sort of thing could have happened at the degree in which it was happening.
Wow.
Because of the geographical location, in which we were bringing all this stuff. Plus being family in a town of, close-knit people.
It's crazy. It's just like it's so long ago now that I feel like the fact that you waited so long until 2012, 2013 to start looking at actually writing this story, you've kind of lived a whole nother generation of your life. Yeah. I think it makes it a lot more powerful, because not only did you go through the whole system and reflect on it there and then get out of prison, but then you had a whole life in front of you. You got married, you had kids, you had all this perspective.
I was blessed to be able to have my kids. The two most important things, people in my life. you know.
That's awesome.
And I get choked up when I think about that because, you know, had these sequence of events not have taken place the way they did, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you right now. And dropping back a bit, a few paces on, you know, ultimately writing and educating people on how actually this was done, you know, and how it can be done non-violently, not like you see what's happening on the borders of our, you know, of the United States and Mexico. But knowing that, you know, giving people a level of comfort now that it's fucking quasi-legal in every state in the United States. Right. It's medically and recreationally legal in, you know, at least 32 of these United States right now. Which, by the way, I'm thinking I should get some fucking credit back or something, you know, because I can go down the street and buy the fucking shit now, you know.
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
You know what? It was bound to happen, you know, because, you know, having talked to some of these agents who were in charge of my case, like David Waller, the
and you're friends with these guys now, too.
One of my dearest friends is, you know, John was the supervising customs agent that was involved in my case. Awesome. And two of his interdiction specialists that were running interdiction vessels chasing my ass out there a number of times. You know, they even said out of their own fucking mouth what a waste of time it was for them. All the billions and billions of dollars over the years trying to, you know, stop something that was virtually unstoppable because it was a war of attrition. Right. You just keep throwing this shit and it's going to get through. You know, lose one, who cares? Lose one, who cares? You know, like that. But, you know, when you started talking earlier in our conversation about how the Mexican cartels wound up, you know, wanting the cocaine and like that. Well, here's a bit of information regarding that. Now, I had a meeting, it's probably gone about 7 years or so now, 7 or 8 years now, that I had the opportunity to visit in his office. The supervisor for Homeland Security for South Florida invited me to his office to meet a legend, he said. I started laughing. I said, what the fuck are you talking about?
God damn, this world got backwards.
He says, no, come and talk to me, he says. I'll explain to you, you know. And it turns out that we, by association, we had the same family doctor, family physician. And
is he allowed? He's not allowed to tell him that, though. HIPAA.
Well, he was telling him about me. You know,
the doctor was telling you.
Yeah, telling, you know, this Homeland Security guy. You know, but because I'm always in there talking to him, you know, about, you know, this was before medical cannabis came about. I'm, you know, giving him a bit of history. He was, you know, everybody is engrossed in this right here, you know, so he felt it, you know, that. He said, do you happen to, no, it just came into conversation. I don't know how exactly, but, you know, my name come up and he said, oh, give him a number, have him call me, or, you know, I'll reach out to him. So I don't remember the precise details about how that came about, but we wound up talking that day. And that's when he said, you know, come in, I want to meet a legend, you know, like that.
And what did he want to know?
He just kind of wanted to kind of sit back and get from himself, you know, from the mouth of the guy, you know, how this was taking place. And he was eager to tell me what took place and eventually happened to that industry once they took it out of our hands. Now, he said, and this was something that I did that I wasn't privy to, you know, and I needed him to explain this to me. I would have not known this. And quite simply, he said that when they ended the cocaine importation into South Florida, and then there shortly after ended the marijuana importation in Southwest Florida, and the degree in which it was being done as far as taking my crew out of the picture, that ended Caribbean weed from coming into this country in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
That ended Caribbean weed. No, it didn't happen in Texas either.
Really?
Yeah. There was a huge paradigm shift in those two industries, and what took place was this. The Sinaloa, who've been around forever. There's nothing new about this fucking guys, okay? In Mexico. They didn't want the Caribbean weed or the Colombian weed. They had their own.
Yes.
What they did, and they had the opium poppy to make the brown tar heroin and whatnot. They could grow that poppy in Mexico. They couldn't grow the coca plant.
Yep.
So they wanted the cocaine. So now, it's not coming into South Florida anymore. Cocaine is going into the Sinaloa, going into Mexico. That's how they got their hands on it. The Caribbean weed they didn't want. The Colombian weed they didn't want. Where does it go now? To North Africa and Europe.
Really?
That's the market for Caribbean and Colombian weed now. Since they took us out of the picture, that's where it all turned to.
Is this? Did they do that through like used cars? Smuggle it that way?
I have no idea how they did it. I didn't really get into that with him. The particulars of how that bit of organization was designed.
Wow.
He was just giving to me the paradigm shift in those two industries and how it all happened, how it took place, and how Mexico wound up becoming the killing ground that it is, because they wound up. And I said, well, look, how does it feel taking all this out of the hands of people that never fired a fucking shot at you? And look what's happened to it now.
That's
over 35,000 deaths a year because of this little fucking plant. And that's not even counting what happens with the cocaine and meth and all that shit that's happening now,
That's where it was already, that's the thing. Like the cocaine was obviously very violent, Griselda, all that stuff.
It's always had that violent streak in it.
But the pot, you guys were just running through West Gulf, chilling.
Yeah, exactly. And when they stopped us, and the significance of what it was we were doing literally ended Caribbean weed coming into this country. That's when it shifted in the late 80s, early 90s.
When was this meeting again with him?
This was, I think, probably in 2015, 14, year before I published.
Not
I
that
think
long
something
ago.
like that. It wasn't that long ago. But, I was given this, this bit of information and because I had no clue.
Sure.
So when I asked the guy, I said, look, tell me honestly, please, would you, in percentages wise, what you think your success in interdicting marijuana coming into this country is? And what do you think is your percentage of success? He looked me dead in the eye and said, maybe 1%. I said, thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. They're only catching maybe 1% of it.
Wow.
And I said, that's exactly right. Because in our day, for every 1 pound that was confiscated or busted, 400 got through, 500 got through.
I'll bet.
It's just...
Or maybe it got a second chance with Noriega.
But that's how it all shifted, and the border, our southern border, became what it is because of them taking it out of the hands of a bunch of South Florida people that never fired one motherfucking shot at anybody.
Yeah, I mentioned it a little earlier, but that Narcos Mexico... See, like when Narcos came out and it was all about Escobar for the first 3 seasons, that had all the fanfare. It was Pablo Escobar and everything.
Right.
Everyone knows him.
Right.
But Narcos Mexico, which is the second half of the series, had a lot less fanfare because it doesn't have like the Escobar name, but it was excellent. And it was actually very historically accurate. And when you see how fucking fast this moved from weed to coke and the violence that came with it, I mean, we all know about it now, but it's like... it does make you think. Every time you take out an El Chapo, there's just fucking 10 of them to replace him.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And it's so crazy. And it seems like the war on drugs, like we all rip it as we should, but it's never ending. If people want products, someone's going to always take the risk to get it to them.
Well, that being said, he turned right around and looked back at me and asked me, he said, okay, now how would you stop it? And I didn't skip a beat. I said, legalize that shit.
Yeah.
Knock the fucking sales out of it. Take the demand out of it.
Yep.
And then it's over with.
That
well, look
part's
what's
easier.
happened.
Yeah.
32 states now, like I said, have it legalized cannabis in recreational or medical, and every other state in the United States has it somewhat quasi-legal in some fashion or another. And you don't hear about the brick weed anymore coming out of Mexico. Very little of it do you ever hear about. Because it's who wants that shit? And I told that supervisor, the Homeland Security guy, I said, look, if you snap a picture of some poor bastard, some poor Mexican fucker that's got a bale strapped to his back walking through the Sonora Desert, half dead, and in lieu of getting that bale to here to the United States, his family is being held hostage in Mexico, show him that picture. And then show him a picture of a beautiful, glistening in the sun, medically grade fucking cannabis bud. And ask the people of the United States, which would you rather smoke?
And
what the fuck one you think are going to be pointing at?
It's easy.
This one.
And you know where it's coming from, too.
Exactly. Exactly.
That's the other thing with drugs. That there's so much shit coming in, and obviously weed has a lot less problems with this, but, this drugs all over the place are getting laced with shit, and you don't know it, and then, the fentanyl's the common one, and it's so fucking scary, but, like, weed is the one that... All right, you want to have arguments over the other ones because it's different health consequences, stuff like that. Okay, fine. I hear you. But like weed is the one. It's just never. I've never seen a good argument for it. I'm like, why?
No,
this
there
is
isn't
so
one.
stupid.
The only way that you can OD on marijuana is if you can smoke 1,200 pounds of it in about an hour. That or have that same 1,200 pounds fall off a shelf onto you and fucking squash you. That's the only way it can happen. And this has been proven throughout the years now that it does have a medicinal value to it. It's very striking in its
it does.
In its efficiency in doing such a thing. And once that paradigm shift took place, in the early 90s, it wasn't too long after that was the advent of the Emerald Triangle in Northern California, the Trinity, Mendocino, and Humboldt County. The three counties, the Emerald Triangle in Northern California, where all the old-timer mom and pops were growing homegrown weed.
Oh.
That's what developed, and it wasn't too long after that when California in 1996 became the first state to allow medical use of cannabis.
There's I'm going to show you something afterwards. I don't know if it's the same thing. I was looking at something else. Maybe that is.
Because it's easily grown. Cannabis can grow anywhere in the world. And it grows quickly because it was,
well, if you have a greenhouse.
This just reminded me of this too. As kids doing our thing, as we were doing it with the adults, and we wouldn't always unload at the same guy's house. It was all over the island, and this and that. But it was always one of us guys or two of us kids' job to go around to all these spots where we offload and clip down the plants that are starting to grow because there's just littered with buds and seeds. When the load comes through and the shit starts growing. If I wanted to smoke a joint, I'm standing on the hill getting the traps ready for next season in the summertime. That's hot fucking work. If I want to roll a doobie, I'll just go down to the seawall and pick some buds up off the ground and go roll a fucking joint.
It's all right there. Product's right there. It's awesome.
So that being said, that's how Humboldt County, Mendocino, and Trinity, and that came into what they wound up being today as the Emerald Triangle.
Wow. And what are you doing these days?
I'm
talking to people, telling the story.
Yeah, I had a bit of an unfortunate accident take place a few years back, which I'm drawing a disability for, so my Social Security now. Nothing really devastating to the point of me losing my health or my life and after a number of years, but enough to where I can't I don't function as properly as I should as I would have had I not had that accident. But besides that, it allowed me the opportunity and gave me the opportunity to focus on writing this book. And what prompted it was, like you mentioned earlier, why it takes so long to tell a story like this. Well, a lot of us, for a lot of years, really didn't see what the big interest would have been, And a lot of my friends, even today, even when I was researching and going down and talking to the old timers and getting their story to put this together, who would want to hear about this? Just because to us it was just 40-ton loads were just. That was another night of fucking busting our ass. It was was no second thought of it, But now thinking about it, I said, well, you'd be surprised. I was always one capable of thinking outside the box, and I thought, well, you'd be surprised. And when I went back there to get, some of the backstory from the older generations from prior to my even coming onto the scene, this shit was happening for, 20 years before I showed up, and I'm getting these old timer stories in order to round out the story, to give you the full glimpse of what was taking place. The older generations agreed that, or whoever I was talking to agreed that the story should be told, and it should be told in our lifetime by somebody who was there, somebody who can tell it honestly and without embellishment. And I've been asked that, about embellishing on the story because of the ridiculousness of what it is you're going to read.
Yeah.
And I said, well, look, two things would have come of that. If I had embellished on what I had written, it first of all would have come off sounding just so fucking stupid and outrageously ridiculous. Nobody would have believed it. And second of all, we were already operating on the limits of reality.
What do you mean?
We were already. I would have put it over the top of what was capable of happening.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
You know, we were right on the edge of the possibilities of it being done any more than it could possibly be fucking done.
Yeah, it was a last
to
of
go
its
beyond
kind.
that. It would have been ridiculous as well. So I kept it just as you read it, and you know, without any embellishment whatsoever. And it's up to you, you know, to buy the book. It's on Amazon now. It's in its second edition and printing. It's they were selling. It's I think it's a paperback version of it now. I haven't got my copies yet because it's so new.
You can get an electronic version too.
You can get there's an ebook.
Yep.
There's an audible version of it that is told by a very cool guy by the name of Wes Talbot. When I was on pre-production for the Audible, you know, I got a call. My agent got a message from Audible saying that we're in pre-production. If you have any questions about, you know, that you want to query the the voice, you know, that we've casted for this, feel free to contact him and get a hold of him. So I told my agent, I said, well, hook it up. He said, no, just call the guy, you know, call him. So I called this guy, Wes. He answered the phone. Now, I said, is this Wes? He goes, yeah. Wes Talbot? Yeah, this is Wes Talbot. I said, well, this is your next project, Saltwater Cowboys, Tim McBride. Oh, man, he said, I've been waiting to, you know, I've been looking online or whatever, trying to hear something about how you sound and your voice and this and that. He said, this is perfect. And I said, well, you know, I'm kind of doing the same thing in reverse because, you know, I had you answer the phone and said, hi, my name's Wes Talbot. I'd have hung that fucker up and called the agent. He ain't the guy, man. You know, but through the conversation, he had told me this is the 32nd book that he's done as a voice for Audible. Prior to my book, he had done mostly Stephen King's books.
No shit. So you got a good one.
So I got a good guy, you
That's
know,
great.
and you know, I kind of a little bit because, you know, it's my baby, you know, and now that you hear my voice and you hear how I speak and my tones and my inflection and my, you know, and that stuff, it's all revealed to you in the book. You hear my voice come through the pages.
I agree 1,000%.
I wrote every single word that you write, that you read. This guy here, Ralph, was guiding me through the publishing process. He was a St. Martin's Press author as well. Or he was in the stable of authors with my literary agent, and he tagged him on to me to kind of help me, you know, guide me through the publishing process. Because when you publish a book, particularly with somebody like St. Martin's Press, who has a stable of authors that include Jackie Collins, Robert Ludlum, George Grisham, you know, these are some huge authors, huge names, and I needed to be somewhat worthy of being put in that pool. And because when you offer a book just to a publisher like that, you give them a complete work. You give them page numbered, paragraphed, everything except for the printing of the book in itself. You have to offer them. They, you know,
it's a whole nother business.
My editor, my first editor, I had two editors. When I started, I got a guy named Yanev Poha was his name, and the first 48,000 words or so of the book that I had written was only edited twice by Yanev because it was written in such a way that there was really nothing you could do to it, you know. And really, being a historical tale as it is, you can't fuck with that.
No,
you know?
It doesn't. I knew reading the prologue, forget the fact that it was a crazy story, like the voice, because I had seen some of your stuff online. It's not, how do I explain this? It's almost like it's not written like a book. It's written like you're talking to me.
And there's a reason for that. There are three styles of writing. There's an English and American style of literature. And there's a style of writing called the Chicago Manual of Style. And it allowed me, the Chicago Manual of Style allowed me to be more grammatically forgiven and being able to tell the story in my voice to be more accurately portrayed. And
it's fun.
And that's how you're able to hear my voice come through the pages. Now, when Yanev ditched me, but took a better deal, and God bless him, you know. I mean, he wound up exiting from the middle of doing this book to become the senior executive editor at Doubleday, or Random House rather.
Wow.
And Mark Resnick, who was the senior editor, chief editor for St. Martin's Press, who championed my book to the publisher, Susan Robinson, at that time. You know, they agreed to publish and take my work on. he was he wanted so very much to be a part of the editing process from the beginning, but he couldn't. He was finishing up a book called American Sniper.
Oh, that was a big one.
Yeah, that's a cool story. So when American Sniper finally went, out of copy edit, Yanov took off. Mark jumped in and helped me. Worked with me on the second half of the book, which is another 44,000 words. Is the second half of the book, and we only did one edit together. One.
Amazing.
Because and I had sent at that time he took over. I had already had a lot of this written out, all the way to the end. It wasn't really honed and fine tuned and put together as it is now. And he only said, I'd like to hear a little more about the smuggling stuff and a little bit less about the prison kind of stuff. If you can do that, then we're cool. But at that time,
there's a lot of smuggling stuff.
But at that time, my literary agent, who was Peter McGuigan at Foundry Literary and Media in Manhattan, and he said, "Why did you send that all to him?" And I said, "Well, the guy's got to kind of know where I'm going with this thing." I said, "Don't worry about it. I get one or two edits. I'll know exactly what he wants." Well, I knew exactly what he wanted after the first edit, and that was, and once that went by, and I wrote the rest of the book, it went straight into copy edit.
Oh wow!
And that means copy edit. I mean, you get the punctuation where it needs to be, you get the T's crossed and the I's dotted and all that kind of stuff, and that's the editing process before it goes into type print. That's the last step in the process, and Mark was really very gracious, and in knowing that there's this is a historical accounting, and you just can't fuck with that. And that being said, it was the in-house favorite at St. Martin's Press enough where when they set out advanced readers' copies prior to the copy edit, they sent out a paperback copy of it with all the little flaws and stuff in it to celebrities and newspapers and things like that to get feedback and review. And one of the persons who insisted on having a copy of the book was a gentleman by the name of Bruce Porter. He wrote the book Blow.
Oh, like the movie?
George Young's story. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
From which they got the movie out of. And he offered one of the two reviews that appear on the back of the book.
Oh, yeah, he's right here. I'm looking at it right now.
Have a read of it.
A wild and entertaining true story by one of the biggest potholers in American history. Speedboat chases, women, Colombian mansions. Tim McBride's tale of excess is a thrill to read. That guy's a legend because that Blow's one of my favorite movies.
Right.
It's fucking incredible.
And how awesome to have a guy like that, put some words out, that
so cool,
that describe me in that way.
Are we going to get a miniseries one day?
I'm really hopeful about that. I've had opportunities throughout the years. I even optioned it to FX television for 18 months years ago, and I had gotten as far as them getting ready to attach a director to it. But as these options dictate through the contracts that we drew up, that if you're not into financing for any type of production by the time the last month rolls around, then I have the ability to take that option back. Well, for 18 months, I'm passing up people that are chiming in, like executives from Longshore Entertainment, New Wave Entertainment in L.A., Frank Marshall, who founded Amblin Entertainment with Steven Spielberg, even got word of this.
The problem is with options, they do so many of these, and then they build in that they're going to shelve a bunch of them. It's really sad.
Depending on the length of the option and the wording that you put in place, you can dance around subjects such as that. You have so much time to get this done. You can't shelve this thing, and if you're not into financing by the time the last month rolls around, I'm not going to renew this fucking thing, or I have the ability and the option to or not to. Well, they were duking around, and it just so happens at the same time, FX was in pre-production of a show that's run now for like 7 years, I think, Snowfall.
I'm not familiar with
It's a crack cocaine kind of a scenario, and what they didn't want to have at that time was a conflict of genre on their own network.
Yep.
But they weren't willing to let the story go because it was such an awesome story.
Wow.
So they had kind of thought that they were going to go ahead and produce the series and have another network air it for them. And I thought, well, okay, this is a 2-network deal. This is awesome. But they dicked around again. And like I said, when somebody holds your option, I can't do anything with it.
But now
my hands are tied.
But now it's out,
I
right?
got it back, and I own all that shit, man.
Yeah,
so
we got to figure that out because it's a hell of a story.
the next step in the process is to create a treatment and a first draft of a screenplay. And I'm a writer, okay?
Clearly. Yeah, you did a good
But
job.
I'm not that guy. I'm not that kind of writer. I'm not a screenwriter. I don't know it. I can read screenplays, but I mean,
it's way different.
It is absolutely way different. You have to give them, everything you can give them so they can feel where they're at.
That's why a lot of these amazing authors who write books and then have the time per se don't adapt their screenplay.
And you would be surprised how many cult classic feature films that came this close to not being made because of stupid shit like a script or
Godfather.
Financing. Forrest Gump. Awesome fucking movie.
Amazing movie.
I mean, just incredible fucking movie. Came this close to not being made. Why? Because first of all, they went through script after script after script and turned it down until they finally found the one they did. Once they got into production of the movie, it kind of, lost its push with regards to financing and went over budget like a lot of movies do.
Yep.
Tom Hanks actually had to support in financing the last half of the movie himself.
I didn't know that.
In order to get it made. And now that it's gotten made and it's gotten out, look what it turned into.
Good bet.
Jeez.
It's crazy the number of things that happen by
it. Can happen or not happen, just like you said. There are authors out there that I bow graciously to. Oliver Stone being one. He wrote Scarface, for Christ's sake. He's mentioned my name. He's heard of me.
Oh, that'd be cool.
And a book that he says I absolutely love this shit he says. And I'm humbled to death and privileged enough to hear that come out of a man's mouth that wrote Scarface, for Christ's sake. The movie.
Fucking A, man.
But
well, I hope we get it, man. I mean, if people can't hear it, this is probably gonna be 2 podcasts because it was just too good to.
Well,
stop.
I'm not giving up, man. This is my life
This
story
is awesome.
here.
This is awesome. I mean, your perspective is really cool too because it was a long time ago as well, and you waited a while to do it. But listen, man, I really appreciate you coming down here and doing this. It was absolutely awesome.
Not at all, man. And one caveat to what you just said regarding having written the book and the reason why it was written and getting back together with the older generations and some of the guys that I grew up with, and to round out the story, it was important for us not only to have people who understand exactly how this took place in a non-violent atmosphere and family-oriented atmosphere, but it was also important to allow the story to be told by someone who was there that could actually tell them from the start to the end and worked almost every position there was to work in that little bitty industry and how we were doing that to tell it correctly. Where if we just, let it sit and rest without having told the story the way we need it told, honestly and truthfully, and allow 30 or 40 years to go by and we're all dead and have some half-assed journalist or historian patch quilt together from all these articles a story that they think took place. We weren't willing to allow that to happen, so that's why they gave me the nod in the head and said, write this fucker, Timmy, and tell him all about it.
You fucking did, man. So thank you for doing it.
Oh, my pleasure, my
man.
And
thank you for coming down here.
Oh, thank you so much for letting me be here and
Of course.
I always indulge myself,
I always say that with Florida. I don't know why. When I bring Florida people up here, I always say, thanks for coming down here. I have no idea why. But anyway, I got to get you out of here on this flight. But this is probably going to be 2. So
that's cool, man. Hey,
we'll get
me back and we'll go another 4 hours, dude.
I bet we could. There's a lot I didn't touch today.
This is 40 years and 3 generations and being storytelling to
What a life. What a life.
But I thank you, and I thank you all for, sticking around if you have stuck around to the end of this thing and have a listen.
Hey guys, I wanted to take a second to speak to the loyal listeners and viewers of this show who've been rocking with me for a while, or even people who have just joined, just to give a little State of the Union here. As far as the growth of this show goes, I do often get the question from many of you about, well, why do your episodes not have hundreds of thousands or at least tens of thousands of views every time? Why are they so low? I don't understand it. This is crazy. Your shorts have such high views. It is because YouTube, with their algorithm, the way it works is like the shorts channels, they all have a problem with long form getting viewed. I don't need to get into details right now, but I know YouTube is working on it. For now, this is what we have to deal with. So even when I do episodes that do insane watch time, like I'm thinking of episodes where I'm doing numbers that the industry standard for long form podcasts is like 11 minutes average watch time. I'm talking about episodes where I do like 40, 45, things like that. It does not get pushed into feeds because YouTube has basically separated out the shorts from the long form. So what I've really relied on is going viral on shorts, and when that happens, enough people clicking the link that I provide in the comments and the description to come to the episode. That's why you see episodes that have some high views. We have like, I don't know, 5 or 6 of them that have over 100 or close to 100,000, something like that. But in the meantime, in order to grow this thing, what I really need is people sharing around the show a lot. Sharing it with your friends, sharing it on social media, sharing the clips. I mean, when those clips spread, we're in business. So every time I have a clip, if it's something decent or shareable, if it's not, don't share it. Like, if it's not good enough, please don't share it. But when I have a good one, that share button's huge. Sending that around, putting it on your stories, whatever. I'm awful at asking for help. I literally never do. I say the same shit in every intro, just about like, oh, subscribe, like, love the comment. Like, that's the most you're going to hear me ask for help. So I understand I actually have to step out of my shell a little bit with that and discuss it. So this is me doing that. And, you know, I'm blown away with where it's gotten. I would like to be at a point where I'm actually making money so I can invest in this thing and have people helping me and have a producer here more than anything. To this point, for those of you who don't know, because I do get this question a lot, so I assume a lot of people don't know this, I have never employed a single person on this. I have never paid a dime to someone else. I've never put a dime of marketing behind this. Any money that I have made, which is very little, goes right back into investing into the show, paying the bills of the show, paying my healthcare bill, and paying for people to fly in when I've done that. You know, sometimes that's been a little costlier than I first imagined. So I put it all back to make this product as great as possible. It still has a cap on it while I'm not making enough money. So basically growing it is the key to success here, and it also can unlock some serious partnerships. So I really, really appreciate everyone who has rocked with this thing to this point. You guys are incredible. Like I said, this thing started on 0. I'm blown away with where it's at. But I do always want to be honest about, you know, what's needed to be able to get it to that next level. And so any help I can get there with sharing it around and getting the word out is huge. I will continue to say that in some comment replies. You'll hear me say, like, keep spreading the word. It's corny, but I'll say it. Repetition is important. I understand that. And so let's get it rolling. But I'll be talking about this sporadically now. Sometimes it may get boring for people hearing it many times, but it is important that I do it. I want to be open about that. So thank you to all of you guys who have been so supportive of this show. And other than that, you know what it is. Give it a thought. Get back to me. Peace.